a week until tip-off for Mick Cronin and the Bruins, but only one final tune-up to see what they've got prior to the Rider game. What to look forward to against Cal State LA.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Where we get started today is UCLA has one big tune-up prior to their season opener against Rider on November 4th. They host Cal State LA at Pauley Pavilion on October 30th, so a couple days from now, where UCLA, coming off that scrimmage, lost to San Diego State, that closed-door scrimmage, by the way, which did have a box score, and we saw Mick Cronin truly balanced a lot of his players when it came to minutes. 11 different players got time. Most importantly, it was Kobe Johnson playing nearly 30 minutes, but everybody who got in the game played 11 minutes or more. So we'll see if that same balance applies to the Bruins in their first true look against another opponent in front of the public eye. So what are the Bruins going to take on where they're playing Cal State LA? One, this is a Cal State LA team, the Golden Eagles, that actually has a pretty familiar coach, if you remember the name. Not the head coach, but an assistant, Michael Cooper, a Hall of Fame Laker. Yeah, Michael Cooper is on the Cal State LA staff. So if you wanted a little tidbit to notice when you're watching that game, whether it's on the subscription, you're listening to it, you're following the box score, you're going to remember that name, Michael Cooper. But most importantly, it's the players on the floor, because this is a Cal State LA team that went 24-8 last year. They won their CCAA tournament and fell just short in the opening round of the NCAA D2 tournament in their exhibition last year. They went to Cal Poly up in San Luis Obispo and waxed them by 15, a D1 team. Yes, you could argue about the quality competition there, but Cal State LA went up and beat a D1 team in an exhibition last year. Now it's not the same caliber as UCLA, but what the Bruins need to do is make sure, hey, this was a tournament team that last year, these exhibitions, they mean a lot to these D2 and these non-D1s, especially in basketball, if you can get hot from three-point range, all these things. What I'm wanting to see is a UCLA team that wants to come there and dominate. There's a lot of spots open, right? Theoretically, every spot is open. I know Dylan Andrews has his spot solidified, and so does Kobe Johnson and most likely Tyler Bilodeau. The 2 and the 5 are the spots where I am wondering, the two positions on the court for Mick Cronin, where the starting lineup, I think, will be an indicator. If it's different, then it will mean Mick Cronin's either playing matchup baseball, someone's played and had a better practice over the last week plus, or might be a true indication of what UCLA's starting lineup would be. Against San Diego State, the lineup included Daly Jr. and Sky Clark at the 5 and the 2. Now, I'm not sure Sky Clark would lose his position, but after max 15 off the bench, that's somebody who could earn his way into a starting role. For Daly Jr., it's going to flip-flop between whether it's a healthy Adai Mara, if he can earn himself some starting minutes as the 7'3 Spaniard. You've got the likes of Daly Jr., who I think can be a very big player for UCLA, can guard multiple positions, can play in the wing, can play in the post as a small ball 5, like he did at Oklahoma State. Or who I thought was the favorite and probably still could be, William Kyle III. The transfer from South Dakota State, made a tournament berth last year, supposed to be a big-time rim protector, still got a lot of minutes. Those guys playing the 5 were out-muscled, out-rebounded by the San Diego State bigs, who played only 8 guys, and their guy got hot from 3. UCLA, I want to see the physicality imposed against Cal State LA. And then most importantly, does Cronin in the early stages, right? Does he diversify the minutes, or is he going to go with a set of guys for a little bit before spreading out the minutes, right? Does he give his starters some run, or is it going to be 10 minutes there, 10 minutes there, and how does the pressure work? Because the starting lineup will tell a lot. 2, If UCLA is forcing San Diego State in a preseason scrimmage to 24 turnovers, what are they going to do to our tournament team from a D2 team last year, right, in Cal State LA, who does have three of their four top guys back from last year's team that was heartbroken in the early stages of their West Regional for the Golden Eagles. So I want to see what the pressure looks like. Will Cronin throw in any wrinkles? Are we going to see that full court press? Or is he going to keep that out of the viewer's eyes, not on tape, and just let his guys play half-court defense and force a lot of turnovers? And if UCLA is forcing 20 turnovers just from playing half-court, three-quarters court defense as opposed to what could be and what should be this year, a team filled with a lot of full-court pressing, a lot of pressure, a lot of traps, a lot of moving pieces coming in and out, then that will be important to see what UCLA can bring against Cal State LA, right? Those are some things. The starting lineup, where the pressure is coming from, and then 3, in this game, when it is still, relatively close at some point in the first half, who is taking the bulk of the shots? Who is having the plays drawn up for them? Where's the ball going to? Last time out, it was Dylan Andrews, who took 9 shots and was not efficient with it. In the scrimmage, Dylan Andrews took the least amount of shots, or, he scored the least amount of points with Lazar Stefanovic. The two guys who played the two most amount of minutes last year, basically, for UCLA, especially as a returning duo. And Stefanovic is going to start on the bench this year with the transfer coming in Kobe Johnson. I think the big thing is which one of the guards in the backcourt will play. So who starts and which of the 3 guards from Dominic Harris, Sky Clark, and Sebastian Mack play better, all right? I think Trent Perry is more likely to be a backup point guard role for Dylan Andrews or could bring something different. We'll see how that plays out. Those 3, I want to see who can come out and ball. What is Harris's role to be? Will it be defined as a scoring guard shooter like Dave Singleton, or will he earn himself a starting spot? Is Mack fully healthy, re-energized, rejuvenated, hopefully a better three-point stroke? Will he compete with Sky Clark for starting minutes? And who can handle the pressure of possibly being yanked or losing minutes from a game-in, game-on basis? All right, those are 3 things to look at. The starting lineup should tell us something from what Mick Cronin trots out. If it's the same to what it was against San Diego State, then we know our most likely opening night lineup. 2, what pressure does he showcase and how good does it look? Because it's already forced a lot of turnovers. They showcased it in their inter-squad scrimmage. It's come out as a big focal point in the closed-door scrimmage. What does it look like in the opening exhibition against a team that wants to upset and embarrass UCLA, and an exhibition that they take seriously for both teams? And then 3, which of the guards play the best, right? I know it'll be back and forth from this 5 spot, from the center position. Cronin is going to have that working on a game every game. Who plays the best in the backcourt for UCLA? Those are the big things I'm looking for the Bruins against Cal State LA in their tip-off scrimmage exhibition against Cal State LA, October 30th at 7 p.m. at Pollard Pavilion. All right, I'm excited. We'll talk about it. And hey, let's talk about the women too, because the ESPN was talking about one of the big storylines in the women's side. And you know what they're having them as? Which one of the 2 LA teams get to the Final Four? All right, that is how good they are. So let's talk about them next and talk about some of the newcomers who you may have heard about, you've probably heard about, but probably forgotten about. Let's talk about them next on Locked On UCLA. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. When you get that hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Hey, you look at that UCLA-Nebraska game. Nebraska on FanDuel, they're -7.5. The Bruins this year are 4-3 against the spread, though, with Deshaun Foster and company. Might want to check that out. Right now, it's Nebraska -7.5. Just visit FanDuel.com today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right, here we go. Second segment for the Locked On UCLA podcast. We're talking women's basketball because they are expected to be one of the elite teams. They were expected to do so last year, fell a little short in the Sweet 16. And as they try to keep going for the first time in program history during the NCAA era of sanctioned women's basketball, the Bruins are wanting to make a Final Four. All right, yes, they have history prior to that, but it's been a long time since the team from Los Angeles has dominated the women's basketball scene from those two big schools in downtown Westwood. All right, here we go. What can the Bruins do? And the big headline, reading on the ESPN side of things, hey, can the LA schools get to the Final Four? That is it. The two top dogs from the Pac-12, two of the top three top dogs from the Pac-12 last year, are expected to be the two top dogs in the Big Ten, battling for a first-year Big Ten championship. They're battling for a first-year Big Ten women's soccer championship. UCLA and USC are doing okay for themselves right now. And the big hype with the Juju Watkins versus the Kiki Rices and Lauren Betts of the world will make a huge stand for the Lindsey Gottlieb versus Corey Close Big Ten Coach of the Year debate, right? I think one of those two coaches, probably barring some super surprise, is going to win a Coach of the Year award in the conference's inaugural year with all these new West Coast schools. And the Bruins have quite a few players they've brought over. Janiah Barker, Tamea Gardner, and Charlize Ledger-Walker, the transfers from A&M, Oregon State, and Washington State coming to UCLA. All right, what do they bring for a team that's looking to make to a Final Four? Not a Sweet 16, not an Elite 8. They want to break down the door, get a 1 seed and a favorable draw, play that closer to home regional, right? How they do it in women's basketball, or how they've been doing it, is 2 regionals with 2 full regional finals being played at 2 sites, one more East Coast, a lot more Western, right? As opposed to the men's side where they have 4 sites. The women's side, they have 2 sites. You don't want to go to the East Coast and go play South Carolina for a second time in the Sweet 16 away from the West Coast. You want to beat them in November, prove you're one of the best teams in the country, lay the smackdown on USC, and then get an easier routes, and not have to face these teams for a second, third, maybe 4th time, depending on who you're playing earlier in the tournament and further away from home. That's not what you want to do. But some of these players are going to help, and this is how Corey Close reloaded her team. You have Charlize Ledger-Walker, who comes in using her grad year, the 5'10 guard, who carried Washington State through the Pac-12 tournament in the 2022-2023 season to the NCAA tournament in a magical run, right? She had 40 points in a game at Washington in December of 22, was one of the best players for the Cougars. Last year, all Pac-12 would have had much bigger and better accolades if she didn't get hurt during the UCLA game, where her play, albeit with UCLA missing Lauren Betts that game, led the Washington State Cougars to a big lead and an eventual upset versus UCLA, where the Cougars nearly blew it against the Bruins because Ledger-Walker was not available for the second half of that game and missed the rest of the season. All right. This is what Charlize Ledger-Walker's career numbers are. All right. This is somebody who has already played 4 years of career basketball and can use her COVID year, played the fewest amount of games in her career last year while starting every single game in her Washington State career because she got injured this last season. So far, 105 games for Ledger-Walker, 105 starts. Averages 36 minutes per game. I don't think she'll be needing to play that many minutes, but this is what she brings. A 16.5 point per game score, all right? 18 a game as a freshman, 16 a game as a sophomore, 17 a game as a junior, 13 points per game after her super on-the-map performance, put herself on the map performance as a junior, 13 points per game as a senior, where she averages 6.5 boards. Her assist numbers went up. Her turnovers were going down, and she had 36 steals. So this is what Ledger-Walker, while seeing a 4 points per game decrease in her senior year at Washington State, she saw an increase in rebounds per game, saw a significant decrease in personal fouls called against her, was probably going to break her personal single season record for assists, and as her assists per game total went up, her turnovers were slowly going down, and possibly was going to have one of her best years stealing the basketball if she continued to play the next 9 games, as she could just score the ball at will. All right. So a score who can shoot an elite clip, 40, well, maybe not elite, but 40%, gets to the free throw line, hits them about 80%, knows how to score the basketball and lead a team to victory. All right. Imagine that as somebody who comes off the bench for Kiki Rice or plays alongside her. Remember, because the Bruins are losing Charisma Osborne. So depending on the health of Ledger Walker, I haven't really seen a lot about how healthy and ready to play she is initially to start the season. But it's been a long time since she has gotten hurt, recovered. And remember, she started every game in her career. And what these teams have done was go after the Washington States and Oregon State players of the world. UCLA, USC, all these other teams, right? Getting the Reagan Beers of the world who are not on UCLA, USC, but they just depleted that roster that made it to an Elite Eight last year or a tournament 2 years ago, or a Washington State team that started the year in the top 25. It is elite talent who UCLA got in the portal. Don't let USC and Juju Watkins and what they got from Stanford fool you. Ledger Walker is just as big of a get in the portal for UCLA, barring she's healthy and ready to play starting the season and for the whole season, because the Bruins were a little beat up from some absences from Lauren Betts last year, from some injuries that hurt the team, some retirements, everything for UCLA. I think they're a much deeper team. And we're not even talking about the freshmen this episode. So Ledger Walker is huge. Janiah Barker, sophomore last year at Texas A&M. These are her numbers for the Marietta, Georgia native. All right. So she comes in with career numbers, if my computer really wants to work with me here, from Texas A&M to come over to UCLA, played at Montverde Academy, 6'4", tall person to play in the paint. All right. So these are her numbers. Plays about 26 minutes per game last year at Texas A&M, 25 minutes for her career as an Aggie. Averaged 12 points per game, had 39 blocks, 51 assists in her career, averages about 7 rebounds per game, and can make the three ball a little bit, and is pretty efficient inside the arc, 48% if you take away her three-point numbers. So a scorer who can rebound, who can dish it a little bit, and add some size to UCLA on the perimeter in the paint, and give that more stretch the floor ability to go alongside with Lauren Betts, right? 6'4" potential for Barker, listed as a forward, probably a stretch four for UCLA if she's hitting those threes. Didn't hit a lot, all right? She didn't hit a lot, but last 2 years, 40% from three and limited capability in her freshman year. And then with 67 attempts, a lot more attempts in her sophomore year at Texas A&M. Only 12 more makes, but still 34%. So that means she can hit a couple of threes and have to have teams respect it while getting rebounds, knowing how to score. Her steal numbers went up plus 18 from a year ago, from her freshman to her sophomore campaigns. So Barker, who's in that same class with Betts, with Kiki Rice, with London Jones, with Jaquez, that's going to add to this team that can play together not just one more year, but 2 more years that this dream class UCLA has, as they're getting the top 4 or 5 of the 10 of the 2022 class. That is going to be really good. Barker is another one of those talented players who will be absolutely fantastic for UCLA. She was the number 3 recruit in the country for the ESPNW Hoop Girls recruiting class. All right. That was in 22. That's with Betts. That's with Kiki Rice. So now UCLA has 1, 2, and 3 in that class, 2 of them coming via the portal. That is how good the 2022 class has been to Corey Close and company. So you've got the top 3 recruits from a recruiting class from 2 years ago, all with multiple years to play with together. All right, you got the grad transfer who can score, led her team to a tournament. A growing player from Texas A&M who has been, I think, a very sneaky ad for UCLA. And let's not forget, Tamea Gardner, junior, coming from Ogden, Utah. In her first season, she had 15 games, 2 starts, was a Pac-12 all-freshman honorable mention during the 22-23 season, despite only playing half the year. All right, that's Gardner, who was a McDonald's All-American, National Player of the Year semifinalist, Jordan Brand Classic All-American. So you got a kid from Utah who's got multiple years to play for UCLA. Last year, Gardner at Oregon State, a team that did go far in the tournament, was very good went back and forth against UCLA in Corvallis for a fun game last year, averaged 11.5 points per game, 39% from three, close to 40% from three, 44% from the floor, as somebody who made 5 threes in a game one time, 5 for 10. That was against Cal in a win, scrappy team to play against, and still averaged close to, 7 rebounds a game. So this is a UCLA team that's going to pride themselves on getting boards, scoring points. They're already high-flying last year and could score a lot of points. They can put in more players. I think Corey Close is not going to need to just ride the same 5, 6, or 7, right? If something like last year, there wasn't, I think, a lot of clarity about what was going on with Lauren Betts. But if something happens to one of these players for a few games, or the travel is getting to any of these players in any of these sports, as we've seen with the much increased travel, the women have to go to Hawaii, play 3 games in a row, go to France, go to the East Coast a couple of times. They're going to be tired, just like all the men. Everybody's going to be tired. It's going to be a very increased pro-like travel schedule. UCLA they got a lot of depth on the women's side as well. I've been spending a lot of time talking about Mick Cronin. Corey Close already had a super group of talent and has just added to it with Gardner, who was a key contributor last year for Oregon State, a team that went deep in the tournament. Barker, number 3 recruit, in a recruiting class that just continues to give to UCLA, the class of 22. And then Charlize Ledger-Walker is, I think, a perfect grad transfer fit for UCLA, barring the health from the injury that ended her season a year ago. A team that the question starts and ends with, can they get to the Final Four? That is the question, not win the Big Ten, beat USC, of course. Can they get the 1 seed and set themselves up for success into the NCAA tournament for the best path to the Final Four in competing for a national championship? That is where it starts and where it ends this year. And I'm excited this year for this team. That starts against Louisville, a top 15, top 20 team in France, 11:30 a.m. Pacific on November 4th. So both teams are going to have a lot of games during that day. Next, we're going around the Big Ten in football. UCLA had a bye week. They get Nebraska this week. What happened around the conference in football? We'll talk about it next on Locked On UCLA. You're looking at that next game, all right? UCLA have a homecoming matchup against Iowa on November 8th, a Friday night. That's a key one UCLA could use to define their season. Big win against a Big Ten opponent. And I think you should want to be there. And maybe the next night you want to go to a comedy event or a concert. There's a lot of things you can go do, and Game Time is the place to go do it, all right? Here's what they've got. They've got these zone deals, right? They've got perfectly curated, all-in pricing. If you toggle it, the prices up front. You can use a zone deal that gets you some of the best prices on the Game Time app. Heck, the Dodgers just had some big-time World Series games over the weekend. How do you think you got some tickets to get some cheaper prices than the rest of the competition? You go to Game Time, you're like, man, that price is dropping. That's how I can sneak into a World Series game with a great price when they were playing the Yankees. That's how yours truly was able to get in Game 2. All right? In the meantime, Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege, $20 off your first purchase. I use that. It's a big discount. Let me tell you. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Here we go. Last segment of the Locked On UCLA podcast. Zach with you guys. We're talking what happened in the Big Ten. All right. And there was one game Friday night, October 25th, in the Big Ten, ironically in Los Angeles. And I don't think anybody in the greater Los Angeles area gave a damn about what happened in that game. I mean, yes, as UCLA fans would like to see what happens with the team we just beat and that ugly school across town, yada, yada. Nobody gave a crap what happened in that game because we were all watching Freddie Freeman hit a freaking salami to win Game 1 of the World Series against the freaking Yankees, all right? Nobody cared about that game that happened Friday night. Nobody. And if you're telling anybody, go watch the video of how loud you were roaring in the Coliseum or any other sporting event that mattered. All right? Nobody watched that game. And if they did, they're lying. They were watching the other game with that game. They had a screen in front of them probably sitting and watching the game. All right? Okay, USC beat Rutgers 42-20. Whatever. That happened Friday night. All we cared about was the World Series Game 1 and the fact that they're trying to knock off the Yankees. So go Dodgers. In the meantime, the other big game I think the only big game of the weekend, truly, in this conference was Oregon against Illinois. I never really thought Illinois had a true shot. They had competed against Penn State. They lost by 14. It was 7-7 after the first quarter, and the Nittany Lions had taken down the Fighting Illini earlier in this season in a battle. Oregon laid the beat down from the jump. It was 35-3 at the half, 35-9 after 3, and Oregon their running back just ran right over an Illini defender, just bowled over him into the end zone. Yeah, Oregon is a true clear-cut number one and might not get tested once again until they go to the Big Ten championship game, which could very much be a rematch against Ohio State. Could be Penn State. It could be Indiana. It could come down to some weird, controversial tiebreaker if you got Penn State, Indiana, and Oregon all undefeated in the top 5. But then at that point, they'd all make the college football playoff. So I guess it wouldn't be the end of the world. Who knows? That's the day and age we live in with an 18-team playoff. Oregon destroyed Illinois, who's 6-2 and having a good season. But it just seems like if you're not the same, if you didn't play Oregon the first 2 weeks and almost beat them, yeah, you probably missed your shot unless you're Ohio State or a top 3 team in the conference. Penn State against Wisconsin. Wisconsin actually led at the half. Drew Aller was hurt, so Penn State had to go with their backup quarterback. Remember, Wisconsin lost their starting quarterback earlier this year against Alabama, and it took a 14-0 blitz in the fourth quarter for the Nittany Lions to walk away from Camp Randall with a win. Unique, but hey, Penn State's, I think, one of those weird, beatable top 3 teams. They haven't blown the door off anybody. Their quarterback was hurt in this game. Let me not remember that. Drew Aller, as much as I don't put a lot of faith in him, he was hurt. That's a big loss for them. And Penn State's dealt with a few injuries, but their defense is too good. They don't allow a lot of points, and they're just going to be in a lot of games. I wonder what that game, Penn State hosting Ohio State this week, is going to mean while we're all keeping our eyes on UCLA and Nebraska, right? Speaking of both those teams, Ohio State and Nebraska, they played last week. Nebraska was about 25-point underdogs, and they went into the fourth quarter leading against Ohio State with just about half the quarter to play. That's when I was able to, fire this bad boy up. And then Will Howard led his team on a touchdown drive. Nebraska was trying to go down the field for a late drive for a score. Instead, it was a pick from their true freshman quarterback, but they played much better after losing 56-7 to Indiana the week before. Nebraska held their own in Columbus, and that was after Ohio State had a bye following that defeat against Oregon in Eugene. Nebraska's 5-3. They're wanting to make a bowl for the first time since 2016. All right. That's back in the Jim Mora era if you're UCLA, right? That's a long time ago. A lot of Nebraska coaches ago. A lot of Nebraska heartbreak ago. Another one-score defeat for Nebraska on the road for a team that was four-score underdogs against Ohio State. You can see how good the defense can be for Nebraska, but how the offense, and if UCLA's defense can be up to the challenge, give Raiola a little bit of some confusing looks, he will make a mistake or two. It's got to be up for the UCLA defense to make sure Nebraska doesn't blow up offensively. But how legit this Nebraska defense is. And the offense is going to have to prove they figured something else versus Rutgers, the UCLA Bruins did, or if that was just a fluke. Because that Nebraska performance was impressive in Columbus. I think another equally important performance in the Big Ten, Indiana, all right, for our basketball-loving brethren, we're going to despise them on Valentine's Day evening when the Bruins go to Assembly Hall. But for football side of things, Indiana, they're 8-0. And that's with Curtis Warwick out. They beat Washington, who gave them a fight. I felt like Indiana probably should have been up a bit more earlier. But they won this game by 14 in a sellout in Bloomington. UCLA still has to play Washington in Seattle November 15th, Friday night. So Indiana, they held on without their quarterback. That's huge. That's interesting. And I wonder how the Big Ten is going to get decided if both Indiana and Penn State beat Ohio State. Because that would be a funny thing if we got 3 undefeated Big Ten teams with only 2 spots to play for a bye in the college football playoff. Then you've got Iowa and Northwestern. Northwestern 3-5. Iowa puts up 40 points again. All right. I've been making fun of this Iowa offense, but they put up 40 points against some decent competition the last few weeks, in the last month or so. I'm still buying the fact that UCLA has an opportunity to go out and knock off Iowa. That's my rose-colored lenses. But that's going to be a big Hawkeye crowd wanting to come to the Rose Bowl and knock off UCLA in a couple of weeks. We'll only find out if UCLA has figured something out, if they can go perform well against Nebraska. Solid, tough defense. Same thing against Iowa the next week. Probably a much worse offense, all right? But they're 5-3, beating a 3-5 Northwestern team. Interesting domination there for the Hawkeyes. Then you've got Minnesota against Maryland. They destroyed Maryland. Maryland is 1-4 in Big Ten play. So UCLA is not in last place in Big Ten play, all right? I want them to beat that preseason poll prediction of 15th, and UCLA's got to get 2 more wins to beat that, and what will be a logjam at the top and the very bottom of the Big Ten standings. And I think maybe the surprise of it all was Michigan beating Michigan State despite having some more quarterback issues. 24-17, Michigan got their 5th win. Michigan State is trying to get to a bowl in a new year with Jonathan Smith, with a young quarterback, Aiden Childs. But Michigan wins and holds serve at home. If that game was in East Lansing, I think Michigan State wins. There's a brawl late. Michigan's been fighting. All right. I would love to have seen what UCLA could have looked like against the Sparty this year or the Wolverines, with Michigan being supposedly a solid defensive team. They can run the ball. UCLA's been pretty solid at handling the run. And for a team who has no quarterback, I would have loved to see how UCLA could have held that and handled that situation against the Wolverines. That's something I wonder how that could have gone. Because think, Iowa, they put up 40 points against Northwestern. Their quarterback, Sullivan, threw 79 yards. Yes, there's a little bit different there, right, with Cade McNamara and everything. But, some of these teams don't have quarterbacks throwing for lots of yards. And some of these have had quarterback injuries too. I just wonder where UCLA could have handled some of these teams that aren't on their schedule. But, that's not what we have to worry about this year. What we do worry about is UCLA going to Lincoln this week. Midday setup for us here on the West Coast. Let's go take down those pesky Cornhuskers and surprise everybody. UCLA 7.5-point underdogs, and see if they can do it 2 weeks in a row. All right, 2 game weeks in a row as they had their second bye week. Still a lot of games left. Stay here. Download, like, comment, subscribe for Locked On UCLA basketball, football, everything coverage here on this podcast. Get your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.